So in today's lesson, we're going to be learning how to solo over a minor blues progression like a pro so that you have multiple different approaches that you can take to soloing over this progression so that you never feel stale and you're always able to play stuff that sounds interesting. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So today we're going to be soloing over a D minor blues, but all of the concepts that we're going to be talking about today, of course, are applicable to any key, and it's going to be your responsibility afterwards to try to apply these things in different keys. First of all, let's just go over the progression. So we're going to have D minor for 4 bars, okay? And then we're going to have G minor for 2 bars, D minor for another 2 bars. So pretty simple, literally 2 chords in the first 8 bars of this. And by the way, this is going to be a nice slow blues where it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's going to be sort of a 6/8 type of feel. So 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. So this is a really good way to practice so that you can have lots of time on each chord as well. And a lot of times these minor blues progressions are going to be slower because slower is kind of sad, right? It's kind of doesn't make too much sense to have a minor blues that's super fast, although it does happen. So after we get to the 9th bar, this is where things start to get interesting. So we're going to have an A7, and if you notice, I read A7 flat 9. Very tense sounding chord. This is going to be the 5 chord. So D minor is the minor 1 chord. G minor is the minor 4 chord. And then we're going to have this 5 chord, which we're going to have to talk about because this is really the tricky chord in the minor blues progression. And then we're going to go back to G minor. And then back to D minor. And then finally, we're going to have one more A7 flat 9 before we go back to the beginning of the form. Okay, so that is going to be the form that we're going to deal with in this progression. So, of course, you probably know that if you wanted to, you could play just D minor pentatonic over this whole entire thing. But of course, you're here because you want to learn how to do other things besides just play the D minor pentatonic scale. Everybody knows that you can just pick whatever key the blues is in and just play that minor pentatonic scale. Or, of course, you could also add this note here to make it the blues scale. Right, so some of you probably know that as well. The blues scale is just a minor pentatonic scale. You add the flat 5 to it. What are some different other things that we can use just over this D minor chord? So let's talk about the D minor chord first, okay? So the D minor chord, of course, we can use minor pentatonic. There is another sound that I want you to be able to mix in there, and that is going to be your natural minor scale. Alrighty, now we got another scale that we can put in there. Now, if you're already familiar with your minor pentatonic scale, it's very easy. All you need to do is add this note here, which is the 2nd, okay? It's a half step below the 3rd. And then we also need to add the flat 6, which is a half step above the 5th. So if I go through this whole entire thing and I add those notes in there, basically E's and B flats, now all of a sudden, I have the D natural minor scale. So I'm still sticking with the natural minor scale based on D. So this is a very cool sound. So let's actually just see really quick, what does this natural minor scale sound like over that D minor chord? So it's a very, very different sound. It's a little bit less bluesy than just playing minor pentatonic over it, right? So I just want to preface this by saying that you got to be careful, in particular with this B flat note, when you are on the D minor chord, because the D minor chord has the notes D, F, and A in it. this B flat is a half step above one of the chord tones. And you've probably heard me say this before. If you play a note that's in the key that is a half step above one of the chord tones in the chord you're playing on, it's going to clash and it's going to sound dissonant. And A is a chord tone, so B flat is going to clash with that chord. So does that mean you can't play it? No, that doesn't mean you can't play it. It means you got to understand that that note is going to sound kind of dissonant. So right off the bat on that first chord, what's going to start making you sound more pro is if you can mix up and sort of blend together just thinking of the minor pentatonic scale and thinking of the natural minor scale. So maybe throwing in a couple of E's and B flats here and there, something like this, like a minor pentatonic run, and then landing on that E note, right? That's one thing that you hear somebody like Jimmy Page doing a lot when he's playing over a minor blues. You'll hear him throwing in that second note as well from the natural minor scale, not just using the minor pentatonic scale. So with that being said, let's hear what that sounds like. So now I'm going to mix up minor pentatonic and natural minor scale. Okay, so now we just arrived on the 4 chord, the G minor chord. So let's talk about some different things that we can do on that G minor chord. So first of all, we could continue playing D minor pentatonic, right? We know that you can just spam D minor pentatonic over the whole thing. However, we also can play G minor pentatonic. So that's a very good sound to use over this, and this is what the G minor pentatonic scale would look like. So let's actually go ahead and go back to our D minor pentatonic scale so you can see how it relates to that. Actually, you can get to a G minor pentatonic by simply moving all the A's up to B flat. Boom. That is now a G minor pentatonic scale. And of course, that B flat, I was just talking about that before, that B flat note clashed when we were on the D minor chord. That B flat is actually also found in the D natural minor scale. So guess what? We can actually continue playing D natural minor. So we got 3 options over that G minor chord. We have D minor pentatonic, G minor pentatonic, and we also have D natural minor. Now, there's going to be even more options, but I don't want to give you too much stuff, okay? You're actually going to be able to get a lot out of just doing these different sounds that we're talking about here. So let's see what it would sound like if I started on that G minor chord and played the G minor pentatonic scale now. And we will compare what it sounds like for a couple of these different things. And now we just went back to the D minor chord. So that's a thing that you got to be careful now when we're switching from the G minor. Of course, we have a bit less time on this G minor chord. We only have 2 bars on it. We do not have 4 bars like we had with the D minor chord. So when we switch back to D minor, we want to be able to switch back to the sounds that we talked about on the D minor chord before. So you're not going to want to continue playing G minor pentatonic over the D minor chord, for the reason being that actually that B flat, you're going to be playing that B flat left and right, and that B flat clashes, okay? So let's see what it sound like if I played D natural minor over the G minor chord. So actually, if I add all the A's in and then I add E's as well, there's my D natural minor scale again. So now there's only one difference, okay? I'm playing the same D natural minor scale that I was playing over the D minor chord. However, now I can focus much more on that B flat note there. Why? Because a G minor chord is a different chord. It has different notes in the chord. And actually G, B flat, and D are going to be the chord tones of that G minor chord. So guess what? Now all of a sudden that B flat note sounds fantastic over the G minor chord. And this is why, by the way, you have to understand your triads over any chord progression that you're playing over, because that allows you to see what notes are going to sound good, and it allows you to see how when you're running just one scale over a chord progression, there's going to be different notes that sound good over different chords and different notes that may not sound as good over different chords. Remember, the shortcut is if there's any note a half step above a chord tone, that's going to sound very dissonant over that chord. So actually, believe it or not, if you look at G, B flat, and D, there are no notes that are in the D natural minor scale that are a half step above any of the chord tones. Look, you got C, that's a whole step above. You have E, that's a whole step above D. You have A, that's a whole step above G, and it's a half step below B flat. Half step below, it still sounds a little tense, but it sounds more like colorful. It doesn't sound clashing. So funny enough, it's so ironic that actually all of the notes in a D natural minor scale work better over the G minor chord than they do over the D minor chord. There's actually more clashes over D minor chord, as in that B flat clashes. So let's hear what it sounds like to play D natural minor over this G minor chord here. So there we just switched to the D minor chord. So we got D minor pentatonic, we got G minor pentatonic, and we still can continue to use D natural minor, but we just want to keep in mind that now we can play that B flat note, okay? And of course, by the way, we haven't even gotten into different bluesy techniques that make us sound pro. Right now, I'm not even doing any bending. We're going to talk about that in a bit later in this video. So now, of course, we're going to go back to the D minor chord, and you can use all the exact same approaches that we talked about, so we don't need to go over that again. You can use minor pentatonic, or you can use natural minor. And we're going to go back and we're going to fill in a couple other things in a second. Now, this is the part that we really got to focus on right here. This A7 flat 9 chord, okay? So, first of all, if we wanted to, we could just keep spamming D minor pentatonic, but it doesn't work that great, okay? And I'll show you why. And then I'm going to show you what works a lot better over that chord. So let's just see what it sounds like over that chord if I continue playing D minor pentatonic, just for fun. So it's okay. It sounds like I'm just playing the same thing I was playing over and over before. And now, of course, we went to the G minor chord. Again, now this is the tricky part too, is that we need to start thinking a little bit faster because we need to be able to switch with these chords and switch the sound that we're playing, okay? So there's a problem here, and that is that actually in the D minor pentatonic scale, there's a clash that just doesn't sound that good over this A7 chord, and it is the D note, actually. So an A7 chord is, of course, this is the 5 chord, and the 5 chord, the purpose of it is really to create tension. Like listen to how tense that chord sounds, right? It's begging to go here, actually. It's begging to go to D minor, okay? In the minor blues progression that we're taking a look at, it doesn't go straight to D minor, but it will go to D minor later. If you notice, there's a second A7 chord right before the end of the form that takes us back to the beginning. So that one does resolve to D minor. but this one kind of has a bit of a deceptive movement where you feel like it's going to go to D minor, but then it goes to G minor. So I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm not going to get so into explaining why, because that could be a 30-minute video in and of itself. Actually, go ahead and check out my lesson on the harmonic minor scale if you want to learn more about exactly why this is the case. But I just kind of gave it away there. We're going to play the D harmonic minor scale over this chord. For those of you who don't know what D harmonic minor is, D harmonic minor is going to be the same thing as D natural minor, except that we're going to raise the 7th scale degree by a half step. So in the D natural minor scale, we have D, which is 1, E is 2, F is the flat 3, G is 4, A is 5, B flat is the flat 6, and then we have C, which is the flat 7. So very easy. All we're going to do is move all these C's. There's only 2 of them in this given position. We're going to move those C's up to C sharp. So we could just move them up a fret. This C right here on the 2nd string, I like to move it up here. Because notice when we do this, now we actually have a completely different sound. It's very, very exotic sounding. And the reason that we're playing this is because C sharp is actually the 3rd of that A7 chord. So an A7 chord actually has A, C sharp, and E, and also G in it. So A, C sharp, E, G. That's actually the arpeggio from that chord. And that C sharp is like begging when you listen to it. Where does it want to go? It wants to go up to da da. So that's why we want to be able to play the harmonic minor scale over that A7 chord if we want to really outline the sound that's happening there, okay? Now, you can mix in D minor pentatonic too, and you can mix in actually, this is a kind of a little pro tip here, you can still use that C note that was there before. So you can kind of have this like mixture scale where it's like harmonic minor and natural minor at the same time. It has both the flat 7 and that raised 7. But we want to be able to target that C sharp note. So when I ever teach people about this, I tell them, okay, play that C sharp, just play it over that chord. So let's see now what it sounds like if I play that harmonic minor scale over. By the way, there's also a C sharp here, right below that super low D there in the position. So let's see what it sounds like now. Ooh, so now all of a sudden, you can hear that in that A7 chord. And then we're switching to the G minor chord. So right on that G minor chord, I might hit a G, B flat, or a D. I'm just kind of switching back to one of the techniques that we talked about. So I'm not going to continue playing that C sharp over the G minor chord. That's the thing. You got to be able to think quickly with this stuff, and it takes a bit of practice to get used to it, but you will start getting better at thinking quickly over each of these chords and be able to switch to the next one. So that's the main thing that you want to do over that A7 chord is you want to be able to play that C sharp, that raised 7th scale degree in the D harmonic minor scale. So again, all you need to do is take D natural minor, raise the 7th up a half step, and then that's going to give you that D harmonic minor scale. And then essentially, everything else is going to continue being the same. We have a G minor chord. You can do all the same exact stuff over that G minor chord. You have the D minor chord. You can do all the same exact stuff over the D minor chord. And then you go back to A7, and you can do all the exact same things over that A7 chord. So if you want to just sound like you're running D minor pentatonic, you can. There's nothing wrong with it, okay? What I think is more kind of not ideal is when that's all we know how to do, right? We want to be able to pick things for a deliberate reason, right? So there's one other thing that I want to talk about as far as scales. I know there's too much scale crap. I know when you're playing the blues, you're supposed to just feel it and you're not supposed to think about theory and all that crap. But there's one more idea that I want to talk about, which is very interesting, which is, well, what if I play D harmonic minor over basically any of these other chords? So what if I play harmonic minor over the D minor chord? Or what if I even play it over the G minor chord? By the way, you could play G harmonic minor as well. That's a very interesting sound. So you actually can play harmonic minor over those chords as well. The only thing is that now you have to be very, very, very careful with that C sharp note, because that C sharp note is not a chord tone in any of those chords, okay? It's got a clash, kind of. But you can still play it. You just want to make sure you resolve that C sharp up to D. That's the only thing. So let's actually go back to the beginning, and I'm going to play over the D minor chord, and I'm going to sprinkle in a little bit of harmonic minor on that chord so you can see exactly what it sounds like. See, I'm resolving that up to D. But if I sit on it sounds quite tense, right? So we don't want to sit on that long, but we can actually sprinkle that in there and it sounds like, oh, whoa, where did that come from? It's not something I would do all the time, okay? It's not my default starting place by any means. I would stick more with minor pentatonic, natural minor, over that D minor chord rather than using harmonic minor. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and play through the whole entire progression, okay? And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about how to actually take all these, silly little theory ideas, they ruin your playing and your creativity, and we'll make them feel better and make them feel more pro, because it's not just about playing right notes, right? It's about playing really good rhythms, having good phrasing and good feel, so we're going to talk about doing that as well. That's minor pentatonic. That was natural minor. I'm going to try to mix both of them. There's G minor pentatonic. Went right back to D minor pentatonic. What's that? Harmonic minor. So there we go. We just got through the whole entire form. And I was just making sure that I was changing what we're talking about. So I switched to G minor pentatonic a little bit on that G minor chord. I played a little bit of D natural minor as well on that G minor chord. And then the key thing here, really, okay, if you do nothing else, is on that 5 chord. You gotta learn to start using harmonic minor on that 5 chord. So the last thing that I want to talk about is, of course, we're playing blues. We got to do some bending, okay? We're going to learn all the bends that are possible in the D minor pentatonic scale, and then also all the bends that are possible in the D natural minor scale. So let's actually go ahead and deal with the D natural minor scale first, because you'll see that it's actually kind of easier. Some of them are very tough in the D natural minor, in the D pentatonic scale. So what we need to do is, starting from D, okay, we need to figure out how we can bend to the next note in the scale. So, i.e., D, the next note after D is E. So in order for us to bend to an E, we need to actually play a D and bend up to the E. So I will say, before we continue with this, you're not going to be doing too much bending on these low strings, okay? For the most part, if you're familiar with all your different positions and so on and so forth, you're going to find that there's certain places where it's way easier to do a certain bend from a note to another note, okay? I like to mostly bend on the top 3 strings, the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st string, and there's some things that are just like not going to sound as good on the lower strings, okay? So with that being said, actually bending, if we want to bend this D up to E, first of all, we can bend this downwards because this is on the 4th string. So for the most part, if you're going to bend on those lower strings, you're going to have to actually pull your finger downwards or pull your wrist downwards in order to get that bend, because if I start bending up too much, I can do it with this particular bend because it's not so far, but it's starting to push these fingers, or it's starting to push these strings almost off the neck. And if I want to do an even wider bend than that, which you'll see is going to happen in the minor pentatonic scale, it's going to push the strings right off the fingerboard, and you can't do that. So what I do a lot of times too, if I want to play a D up to E bend, is I'll actually play this D over here on the 3rd string and bend that up to E. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with bending, the way that you do this correctly is you want to play your D and then play E, so you can hear exactly what that note's supposed to sound like. Da, da. Because it should sound like that. Da. After I bend it up. And then once you got that bend, I would recommend actually just immediately throwing a track and trying to mess with it. So let's try it. And the idea is we're going to systematically go through all these different bends that are in the natural minor scale. So we have that D to E bend. Then you can see we can play E and bend that up to F. This is when you got to be careful with, because they're only a half step apart. So you don't have to bend very much. Look how little my finger is moving. So now we have 2 bends. We have bend from D to E and then bend from E to F. So let's see what it sounds like if I improvise a little bit with both of those. All of a sudden, now I sound a lot bluesier, and I'm not playing a lot of notes. But if you're good at bending, that's what allows you to sound really bluesy. So let's kind of speed through the rest of them. So we got F to G. So play F, and then play G. Now try bending F up to G. And this is really cool because 99% of the time when I hear people playing, they're only doing basically one bend. They're bending actually G up to A. That's like the most popular bend in the minor pentatonic scale, right? But now we got all these other bends that are available. They're going to sound more interesting. So we have F up to G. Then we have G up to A. So G up to A, of course, there would be an A a whole step higher on the exact same string. There's an A right there. So we got to play G to A. So we have D to E, E to F, F to G, G to A, and then now A to B flat. Remember what I said earlier about that B flat note? You got to be careful with that one on the D minor chord. But that's a great note to target when you switch to the G minor chord. I always do that. I'll bend. So A to B flat. That sounds so good over the G minor chord. Look, let's listen to that over the G minor chord. Right now, all of a sudden, now we're starting to sound a lot more legit, right? So also B flat up to C. That's another one I like to play over the G minor chord as well, because it starts with a B flat. So even though we're not kind of ending up in a B flat, it sounds really cool. It starts on the B flat. Very, very nice sounding. And then finally, we have C up to D. So there's a D on the same string as that C there, so that you can test it out. So C to D. And that's just bending the flat 7 basically up to the root of the scale. So that's probably the second most common bend you'll see in the minor pentatonic scale. The minor pentatonic scale. Very common to hear that type of thing, but it's also in the natural minor scale. So you got to get all those bends down in a natural minor scale. If you get all those down, now all of a sudden you'll sound bluesy, but without sounding like you're playing the same thing over and over. So let's recap. We got D to E, E to F, F to G, G to A to B flat, B flat to C, and C to D. And then you could keep, of course, continuing. D to E up here on the first string, right? D to E. And then E to F. Overbent that one a little bit. And then if you're familiar with this scale and the single string, you can go ahead and even keep going up higher. So F to G and G to A. That's another thing that I talked about in a video I made a while ago called How to Fake Knowing the Entire Guitar Fretboard, is if you just take one position and then you learn the high E string, all the notes that are available in the scale, then you can get all those really high bends going. And that sounds really cool. So let's solo a little bit, and I'm just gonna use, for right now, natural minor scale and use some of these bends. There's that bend from A to B flat. Oh, but what about on the A7 chord? Oh, so remember we had D harmonic minor that we have to play over the A7 chord. So here's something that I like to do is bend C up to C sharp on that chord. If I want to bend something, let's see what that would sound like. So I'm just bending into C sharp and I'm bending up a half step from below. So from So there, I was bending up to E, bending up to C sharp from C. And remember I said that you can still play that C note over the A7 chord. So last thing, and then we're done. Let's check out the bends from the minor pentatonic scale, okay? So the minor pentatonic scale if we want to stick in the minor pentatonic scale the whole entire time, there's a couple of things that change. Okay, there's a couple of things that are the same, but there's a couple of things that do change. So first of all, let's go over the ones that are the same. So you have this bend from C to D, that's the same. I mentioned that before. You have this bend from G to A, that's the same. You have this bend from F to G. That's one you don't hear people doing a lot, but it's a really good one to do. And then those are the ones that are the same. C to D, that's one we already covered. But now we have a couple of minor third bends that we can try to play. So, in other words, bending from A straight up to C. This is kind of a pain in the butt and a pain in the fingertips. So you notice I'm playing A, C, and I'm gonna bend A up until I hit C. Way more than the A to B flat bend that was there before, right? That one was just a little bit moving up. Now I gotta hear the note that I'm bending to. But that sounds so cool when you get some of those minor third bends in there. Let's see what that sounds like. Oh, now I bent up to the B flat because we went to the G minor chord. So it's interesting, I'm changing notes, but not really because my finger is not moving anywhere, but I'm changing the note that I'm playing based on how much that I'm bending. So you have that bend there from A to C. That's one you very, very rarely hear people playing, okay? So if you start using that in your playing, it's going to make you sound really, really cool. And then also bending from D to F. Remember, before we had a D to E bend, but bending from D all the way up to F sounds really cool too. Now it's kind of hard actually on this first string. Ooh, I gotta really press hard to do that. So I'll show you another place where you can do it. And if you can go back and forth, that sounds so cool. Now I bent up to E there. So it's so cool, like you can actually have multiple different notes to bend to, whether or not you're thinking of natural minor or you're thinking of minor pentatonic. So I would actually rather do that D to F bend actually from this D here in the second string. That one is a little bit more comfortable and easier to bend to. Actually, the higher you go up the neck, it kind of gets a little bit easier to bend. So that one's a bit easier. It sounds a little bit different too, by the way. There's that D up to F. Oop. So that is going to give you a lot of different stuff to work on in your minor blues playing. To recap, using minor pentatonic, natural minor, and maybe a little bit of harmonic minor over the D minor chord, using D minor pentatonic, G minor pentatonic, D natural minor, and we didn't talk about it, but try to figure out G harmonic minor. You can do that on your own and figure out how that sounds over the G minor chord. And then the key concept to it all, hitting D harmonic minor over that A7 chord, and making sure that you got your bends down in all of those sounds. Get your bends down with the minor pentatonic sound. Get your bends down with the natural minor sound, and get that bend down from the harmonic minor scale. That one is a little tricky, but you can do it. So if you want to learn how to master the guitar fretboard so that you can know all of these different sounds that we talked about in this video in every single key and in every single place on the entire guitar fretboard so that you're not stuck in just one place, then make sure you head on over to Jamsville.com right now and pick up your copy of the Jamsville GPS Fretboard Fundamentals course. Also, make sure you head on over to the Jamsville merch store and pick up an awesome Jamsville t-shirt just like this one so you can show to the world that you are a guitar player and that you're representing the Jamsville community where we learn how to play like pros. Also, make sure you check out my new song. It's called My Divine. That's what you're listening to in the background right now. You can check out on all your favorite streaming platforms in the link in the description below. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. The like button really helps out. Let's get those percentages higher. It's only like 5% of you hitting that like button. We got to get that up. And until next time, listen, learn, and jam.